presented by allaccessretail.com. Welcome to Conversations on Retail. Join Mike Graen as he sits down with Dr. Bill Hardgrave, president at the University of Memphis, to discuss the power of the partnership between industry and academia working together to drive innovation in the retail industry. Let's get started.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another Conversations on Retail. We are going to be delivering another exciting discussion with Dr. Bill Hardgrave, University of Memphis president. We'll let him introduce that in a second. But we are hosting this as Conversations on Retail. And this one's going to hurt me a little because Dr. Hardgrave is right here. But we're also being co-sponsored by the University of Arkansas. Go Razorbacks, but don't talk about our football team. And their supply chain department, which is the #1 supply chain undergraduate program for the third year in a row. So congratulations to them. And we do this with all the great folks at the University of Arkansas as it relates to supply chain. So Dr. Hardgrave, you are back on again. You must be a glutton for punishment. Continue to come back to talk about omnichannel and the challenges of omnichannel. But before we get into all that, maybe just give us a brief introduction of yourself.
Yeah. So Mike, first of all, thanks for having me back on here. I know you have a lot of great folks on here talking about topics that are of interest across retail, and happy to be back on here talking about omnichannel, something I've been talking about for some time. And I have been in this retail technology, RFID, omnichannel space, all this combined, for at least 20 plus years. But been in higher education for about 30 years, software startups for then, and just been blessed throughout my career to have a chance to work with great companies like Walmart and Macy's and all these great Hanes and all these great brands throughout the years. And Mike and you and I go way back to my time as a professor at the University of Arkansas when you were P&G and I was teaching an MBA class, and you guys beat up my MBA class. So.
You educated them. Well, I remember that class like yesterday, and we were literally just together last week, and you reminded me of that class because I kept saying, "Well, I've known you for 20 years since the University of Arkansas RFID lab. And they're coming up on their 20-year anniversary next year, for example." Right. So I was referring back to that, and you reminded, wait, there's this class that you brought me to, and I go, "Oh yeah, I kind of remember that class, but it's been a while." I go, "You made my students feel so bad." I go, "That wasn't the objective." I was trying to help them. And just for context, the conversation was, they did all this research and talking about this data sharing platform that Walmart called Retail Link, et cetera. And they said, and we saw a 2% increase in sales. And they were proud of that. And I just said, "Is that good or bad?" "What? It's 2%. Is that good or bad?" "Well, I don't know. What do you mean?" I go, "Well, if you expected 0, 2% is pretty good. If you expected 10, 2% is way short. So what were you expecting?" "Well, we don't know. We got the number. It was 2% of sales." And I said, a number by itself is meaningless unless you compare it to something. I remember that very vividly, and didn't mean to beat him up. I didn't mean to beat him up, but
they Mike, I can guarantee you, they learned a lot from that class, and I'm guessing those students in that class will refer back to that project now because of the lessons they learned. And that example, right, of 2%, again, doesn't mean anything in context, just like some of the things we're going to talk about today around omnichannel and RFID and making retail better. Well, what's better? Well, what's the context, right? What were you expecting? Yeah. What's it cost you, right? If you get a 2% increase in sales, but it cost you, 3% more, then that's not good.
Yeah. So I have, you had an incredible career, and I've seen you in your academic education, higher education kind of purpose, really from the time you were at the University of Arkansas, then the dean at the business school at Auburn, now the president of the University of Memphis. Incredible leadership and the ability to basically run large academic universities, and more importantly, train the next generation of leaders, which we're all kind of responsible for doing. But you also have this hat, which I thought used to be a hobby hat, just to keep your sanity. You want to stay close to the business world. But I think it's more in the hobby. I think it's you got a foot in the university and you got a foot in the actual retail world. How in the world do you figure out how to spend your time? I can't imagine being that kind of responsibility and being able to balance those priorities.
Mike, that's what I said. I'm blessed to be having a career where I can actually have a foot in both arenas, right? And that I can be in higher education and feel like I'm making a difference in young people's lives every day by the things that we're trying to do. Yet also make a difference in industry, right? With the work that we're doing and the projects that we work on and the insights that we bring. I think we make a difference over there as well. And I've just been able. I wish I could had a secret formula. I could say, hey, this is how it works. It just worked. And, I wouldn't have traded for anything in the world. And I really have just really so blessed to be in both of those camps. And I love both those camps. And they complement each other, right? We've been able to think about what we're able to do at the University of Arkansas and then at Auburn and, bringing industry into, the academic realm and expose people to the academic side who didn't think that the academic realm could even participate or be a benefit. And I think we've broken down some barriers there. So I just continue to love to do that. And that's why, I cherish times like this where I can get on with you and talk about the things that we know are happening out there and hopefully, get a spark from somebody who listened to this and go, oh, okay, we ought to be thinking about this or looking at that.
Yeah. Well, and we all know that, we have a birth date and we have a death date and there's dash, and that dash is defined of what we do when we're here on earth. And we all know we're not going to be doing this forever. So how do you actually let the next generation come about? And that's what's really cool about this. And I want to brag on both you and Justin Patton and Senthil at Auburn RFID Lab, because that started out with, I think, just Justin and Senthil and you and a few advisory board members, which I was very fortunate and blessed to be part of. And now my understanding is they have over 100 people now working in that lab. Probably 98% of them are students. And we have students that are working real life projects with industry. They aren't just sitting there doing some theoretical white paper. They're literally, some of them are obviously, but a lot of them are doing real practical work on behalf of retailers or CPG companies or solution providers, et cetera. And so from my perspective, you are also trying to do some of that at Memphis. So you're still playing an advisory board with the Auburn world, but you're actually doing some other RFID with other verticals at the University of Memphis. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Kevin Bariso has our lab here called the Auto ID Lab, and really his lab is more on the really a technical focused lab. He can do a lot of repetitive tests using robotic arms. He's done a lot of work with GS1 throughout the years on, hey, turn this barcode this way or this RFID tag this way, some performance testing of tags and readers, that type of thing. So much more of the technical bend, and that's Kevin. And Kevin's been around this space for a long time, for many years at RFID Journal Live, the big conference each year. He was there at the day before doing the RFID 101 teaching with Mark Roberti, at the time. And so he's just a wealth of knowledge. And the lab that Kevin's running here at the University of Memphis really complements what the guys at Auburn are doing, because the guys at Auburn are much more applied, right? They're going out into the field. Well, there's work that has to be done before you actually get it out to the field, right? And sometimes it is, hey, and I'll take the 2D barcode, right, that we're going to. You've got to be able to test. Will it read a 2D barcode and a UPC on as we're making this transition? And you've got to test hundreds of thousands of these things. Well, there's no way you can have a person do that. But with a robotic arm going back and forth and this angle and this speed and so forth, that's where Kevin and his lab come in, and they're really doing good work here.
That's cool. I'm not at liberty to share who it is, but I'm working very closely with one retailer, and we are about to launch a playbook out of the Auburn RFID Lab on behalf of that retailer that's literally going to have a price label that has an integrated RFID lab or tag and a 2D barcode representing that serialized G10 on the label. So we can actually capture at point of sale that elusive serialized item, which I think is going to be incredibly helpful. Anyway,
huge step.
I digress.
I know we'll talk about serialization today. I know we will, but that that migration to 2D barcode is a huge step for RFID and for the supply chain.
100%, 100%. And I'm not allowed to share more details, but just stay tuned. As we can, we certainly will.
Wiliot's visibility platform connects the digital and physical worlds using IoT pixels, battery-free smart tags that push data to the cloud in real time without human intervention. Their mission is to make every single thing an agent of change, enabling ambient IoT by adding intelligence and automation to food, apparel, packaging, pharmaceuticals, and other products. Learn more at wiliot.com.
Well, it's now 2024. We've been talking about RFID and omnichannel for 20 years. Okay. And a lot has transpired. Omnichannel came from, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually have people sit at home and order stuff and deliver it, and not necessarily Amazon, but through regular brick and mortar retailers? And then a pandemic happened, which absolutely drove and transformed that. And now we're sitting at 2024. So how has this omnichannel work changed, and how's it evolved over the few years, and where do you think it's going?
You know, as I was getting ready for this, Mike, I went back and kind of looked in my archives of when did I first start talking about omni-channel, right, as it related to RFID. And I get invited to make presentations really all over the globe. And the first time that I actually used omni-channel in the title of my talk was actually a presentation in 2015 in London.
Oh, wow.
And it was called RFID, the Omni-Channel Enabler.
Okay.
And, so you think about that. And so I would have been preparing that material, sometime the year before, looking at data and looking at trends and so forth. So about 10 years ago, really started bringing it to the forefront. Now, the term omni-channel has been around, as you indicated, about 20 years. I think Best Buy actually was the first one to actually talk about omni-channel. But at that time, it really wasn't omni-channel, and I'll get to that. But that first presentation, 2015, and then I kind of looked, and I've made at least one presentation every year with the term with omni-channel in the title, including up to the most recent year where I was presenting RFID Journal Live, and the title of the presentation was, "Can retailers be omni-channel ready without RFID?" And the short answer, by the way, is no, and we'll get into that. But interestingly enough, although this term's been around for a long time and retailers have used this term, and I'll pull out some notes even in 2018, because we kind of think about pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? So pre-COVID, in 2018, a survey found that 80% of retailers said they were omnichannel. And they absolutely were not and are not today. And again, I know we'll drill down to that, but in a previous podcast with you, we talked about BOPUS, right? Which is, as we'll get to today, is one of the simplest omni-channel capabilities, and retailers still struggle with it, right? And so can 80% truly be omni-channel if they struggle with the simplest of the characteristics? And the short answer is no, they can't.
So maybe we start with that. So omni-channel could mean, yes, a customer can log on to my website, and a completely separate facility, a fulfillment center or whatever, I can put something that they ordered into a box and ship it to them. I'm omni-channel. So before
you're not. No, you're not.
I know.
I'm going to argue with you.
No. That's what you're going where I'm going. So the real important thing, just like we had to do with your MBA students, let's define what omni-channel. What does omni-channel mean to you? Because I could view that as, yes, I'm omni-channel. So what does omni-channel mean to you?
Well, and so let's start with what it's not. Sometimes you start with what it's not to define what it is, right? And if you go back to that stat of 2018, and 80% of the retailers believed they were omni-channel, they really were not. They were what I would call multi-channel. Okay, so let's go back a little bit further, right? So we had bricks and mortar retailers, right? And sometimes a bricks and mortar retailer had that's all they were, right? And the only way you could buy something from retailer X was you go to their store and you buy it. Well, that's unichannel, right? There's only one channel. Yep. Then some retailers added catalogs. And you could sit at home and you could fill in, Mike, I'm old enough, I remember, you could fill in the catalog, write down what, and actually put it in the mail and mail it in, right? And then you could then mail it to you, right? Well, that's another channel. So that's a multi-channel. Then online came about. And now the first online retailers, think about Amazon. Amazon was unichannel. The only way you could buy anything from Amazon was online. So they were not omni-channel. They were not multi-channel. They were unichannel. They just had a different channel. Then retailers started adding online. So retailers like Walmart and others added the online channel. So they were multi-channel. Now, also, Mike, I know you will remember this as well, is that many bricks and mortar retailers, when they added the online, they added it as a completely separate business unit.
Yep.
Different systems, different personnel, different fulfillment strategies. They were completely two different business. They were multi-channel, but they were truly multi-channel in two different channel lanes. And I remember back then there were some CIOs of some big retailers who didn't feel like that was the right strategy, that those two things should be one. And there were some disagreements, and some CEOs left some big retailers because they didn't believe that the strategy should be two separate things. So some of these CIOs back in the day had the foresight to see, look, these are not two separate things. These need to be blended together.
Yeah.
And really, that's omnichannel, is when those two things blend together, where the digital and the physical become one, and the customer is a customer regardless of which channel you're in. That's omnichannel. So for everybody, listening in, you think about your experience with a retailer. And if you go and this retailer has bricks and mortar and they have online, are you two different customers to them, or are you the same customer? And if the answer is, oh, I'm the same, and they know that I'm the same one, okay, well, at least they are starting down that path to omnichannel. But if you say, no, I've got this login over here for online, but if I buy in store, they don't even know that I'm the same person over here, then they're not omnichannel.
So that's for the customer aspect of it. What about for the inventory? Is the same thing happen? I've got, I've got this one cup right here. If it's dedicated to online only, that's not omnichannel. When you start to share merchandise across the various platforms, you're heading that way, right?
100%.
Okay.
Mike, let me, if you will, I think I gave you a slide called the Omnichannel House.
It's so pretty. I love this one. And by the way, whoever doesn't love this simplicity of this house really shouldn't be in this industry. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that for Justin Patton and Cynthia.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to say his name. Justin, if you're seeing this.
So actually, this was something that, believe it or not, in 2016, I first used this slide in New York at a presentation. And I from my presentation in 2015, I started getting a lot of questions. Well, what does it really look like, right? Yeah, and so I'm a visual person, so I said, well, if we could make it a house, what would it look like? And so it's what I call the omnichannel house. And yes, Mike, Justin and Cynthia, they like to make fun of my omnichannel house, but it has stood the test of time. So it's a good solid house, but. But, the base of this thing is inventory, right? And inventory accuracy. And I'm sure we'll drill down on that later. But this, to me, are the elements. You've got to have your physical and digital elements there that are blended together. You have to have that visibility to that single unit. To your point, right? That coffee cup, you get that visibility to single unit, not, oh, I've got a coffee cup in my online and a coffee cup in my store. No, I get that visibility. And then the next layer is a set of omnichannel capabilities. Buy online, pick up in store is a capability. Ship from store is a capability, right? And then you can stack other capabilities there, ultimately leading to that superior customer experience, which drives sales.
So you've added something very, very important to this house that may be one of those other things that you add later, and it's research online, buy in store.
Yep.
Right. So that wasn't a concept back then, but once you walk through that a little bit, because that whole visibility to the single unit. And I still don't think there's a lot of retailers that have enough trust, even if they have RFID programs, to actually expose that information.
Yeah, so we know from now years of looking at this that 74% of consumers at some point throughout the year check inventory levels before going to the store.
Wow.
I mean, think about that, right? Well, and again, think about your own experience. I when I look at that number, I say, is that realistic? And absolutely it is. Now if it's not if I'm going to go buy a loaf of bread, but we're talking about purchases of substance, right? If I'm going to go buy a television, a pair of jeans, right, or anything, I'm going to check to see if they have what I'm looking for, what they might have. Let me look at the various options. Okay, the TVs is a good one, right? Let me check out these 5 TVs. Okay, now I've got narrowed down to these 2. All right, does the store have them? Because I want to go put eyeballs on these TVs. The store says they have it. All right, now I'm going to go in and check them out, right? Almost 75%, right? 74% do that. So that's a big one, right? And again, research online, buy in store. They're looking at it, then you go to the store. And so we get examples like that, but we also know them from other elements and, from the omnichannel house of blending that digital and physical lanes, right, to one. Things like stats like 55% of consumers would prefer to return their items to a store, even if they bought it from another channel, right? They may have bought it online, got delivered to their house. If they want to return it, they don't want to have to mail it back. They want to take it to a store, right? That's blending those channels. And some retailers still struggle with that, right? You bought it online. Well, you have to send it back online. You can't take it to the store because maybe our store doesn't stock that product. Well, at that point, you're not omni-channel.
Yep.
Right? Because that's you got 2 separate ones. But that seamless blending of the inventory and of the way you view your customer is really hard. And again, I like your example of the coffee mug, because if you're not exposing that to the single unit and you're saying, well, here's my coffee mug that'll be available for online customers to buy, and here's my coffee mug that the in-store customers can buy, but I want to make sure I have it in store, so I'm going to hide it from my online. Well, you're hiding inventory at that point, and as a retailer, you're mentally going, well, I've got two customer sets, and I want to make sure I have it in the store. Omnichannel says, I have a customer who wants to buy this mug, and I don't care how they found this mug or how they buy it. A sale is a sale, and I'm not going to hold inventory for one and lose a sale for the other one.
Yeah. I actually have an example, just a personal example that may be interesting here. I was helping a friend out. He knew nothing about televisions. All he knows is what size it needed to be, et cetera. So I literally got online and did a couple days, not continuously, but a couple days worth of research, looking at this feature and this price and all that kind of stuff. Finally decided I was going to buy him a 55-inch Samsung LED TV, very specific.
Yep.
Did the buy online, pick up in store. Okay, they've got 3. Went to the store. They had 3, but the 3 were not available for sale. One was on a TV wall. One was on a display. They had just taken it out of the box and they were playing some movie or something on it. And one just got returned from a customer because it didn't work, so it was back in claims. So they said, our on-hands are perfectly accurate, but we don't have any TVs. Would you like to look at this Vizio? Well, I just spent 2 days looking exactly which one I want. And I'm not going to, nothing wrong with Vizio, but I know I want the Samsung LED 55-inch. I end up buying it at another retailer. Now, I'm not going to tell you who that retailer was, either one of them, but that was not a good purchase experience because their on-hands were good, but unfortunately, they weren't reflecting visibility to the single unit. They were reflecting what they had in the building versus what was available for sale. And those are 2 different numbers. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so 2016 visibility to a single unit, probably nobody knows what that means. I think people understand now what it means more than ever. Right.
Yeah. And if you play that out, what would happen with many consumers in that case, right, is they're in the store, they're now frustrated because they thought, hey, I was coming in to buy this. While I'm standing here in the store, I start looking, who else has this 55-inch Samsung? Nearby. What's the prices on it? Okay. you just disappointed me, but they have it. I'm headed over there now.
So you're telling me the retailer who you didn't buy it from, they're going to use their Wi-Fi to buy it from a competitor. That's kind of a slap in the face, isn't it?
Well, I mean, and you know what? The retailer kind of earned that slap. I mean,
Yeah.
but because they didn't satisfy the customer in the manner that the customer really expected when they went to the store. And we know, again, when you start blending these digital lines that, some of the recent data that just came out, over 75% of consumers now use their mobile devices in a store to look for items that are in that store, right? Hey, where is this in the store? Or, while I'm in the store, let me check on this. 70% actually compared, when they did find an item in the store, compared that price to another retailer's price before they decide to purchase it. And 58%, to your story there that you just told, checked for availability in other stores. So now think about that. If you're a retailer, now you've got solid numbers here. I'm telling you, if you disappoint that consumer when they come in, 60% of them are going to say, you know what, you disappoint me. I'm going to look to see who has that, and I'm going to go over there and buy it. And, maybe maybe the retailer is large enough and lucky enough that they have another store that's 5 miles away, and they go buy it from another store from that retailer. But chances are they bought it from another retailer who had it in stock, especially if it's a national brand on the product that you're buying.
Yeah. So I've got, and I'll mess up this quote, but Sam Walton had a really famous quote, which is, at the end of the day, customers can hire or fire retailers anytime just by choosing to spend their money wisely. Now, he didn't understand omni-channel and visibility to single unit and all that kind of stuff, because that was way before we got into that. But the reality is, and Doug McMillon, CEO of Walmart, has said the same thing, which is, there's not a lot of loyalty. I either meet your needs or I'll go somewhere else, because this thing right here in my hand has become a way of me as a customer getting me in control. I can buy from wherever I want to. I don't need any specific retailer. So you better have your act together, or no offense, you'll go by the ways of Sears and Kmart and some of those folks who are no longer relevant around, because you didn't meet the customer's needs, and the customer's needs always changing, right? Yeah. Fascinating.
Well, I've got some stats there. You are 100% right that again, this is a recent study. 52% of consumers consider themselves loyal to a brand, a retailer, or a store.
Wow.
52%. Now think about that. Just 3 years ago, not that long ago, that number was 79%.
Wow. Fascinating.
Now, that's a consumer saying, I consider myself loyal to this, but why that erosion? Well, it's because they have everything right here, right? And look, I mean, you're a great example of that TV. If I go in and I've researched that and I went in to buy it from you, and that's a national brand TV, there were multiple retailers going to carry it. I'm not loyal to you as a retailer if somebody else has it at the same price that I'm looking for. And if I want it right now, that retailer who has it today wins. And you may have just cost yourself as a retailer future purchases by that consumer, because maybe that was the second or a third time you've disappointed that consumer. And they say, you know what? Enough with this. I'm not even going to go there anymore. I'm going to start going over here to this retailer who the last 2 times I was disappointed over here, they helped me. I'm going to start going over there.
Yeah, and I don't want to derail us from the conversation, but at the end of the day, the retailer may have it, and it could be available for sale, unlike my TV example that wasn't, but the customer still can't get it without a lot of aggravation. And again, I don't want to take us down this road, but you go to these stores right now and 90% of the stuff is locked up behind, glass cases.
Yep.
Get it. I'm going to get my phone out and just have Amazon deliver it to me. I'm not going to stand there and try and find somebody to come and unlock it. You have it right there. Your on hands are right. Your omni-channel platform is working, but you've just created that barrier. Now, my son's a market asset protection manager for Walmart, so I'm sensitive to the fact that he's responsible for reducing shrink in a store. I get that. Sometimes you have to do that, but we got to figure out a better way than just locking stuff up, because that's just not helping anybody.
Well, Mike, you're batting 1,000 today on your examples because that there was I was just reading an article within the last week about that, about how we're locking up products and you're locking out buyers.
Yeah.
And this group surveyed buyers in stores where they were hanging around these locked counters.
Buyers being customers, or the buyers?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Customers. Yeah.
Okay.
Consumer.
Okay.
Less than a third would take the effort to ask an associate to unlock it.
Yeah.
Think about that. This is a consumer who's literally walked up to the case. I need this, and less than a third will do that. 55% of those same consumers bought it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now, did they bought it somewhere else? Maybe it was unlocked, or they just said, you know what? If that's the hassle I've got to go through to buy these razor blades, right? As an example, I'll just order them online and have them delivered to my house, or I'll do BOPUS, right?
Yeah.
And let a store associate pick it up and tell me when they've got it, and I'll go buy and get it. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? That okay, well, I do BOPUS and the retailer doesn't lose that sale, but you had the consumer in the store, which is exactly where you want them, right? And if they were irritated enough that they're not going to ask to have this unlocked, they may not buy anything else. They may have had stuff in their cart and just go, you know what, forget it. If I can't get this, I'll just go somewhere else to buy everything. But you had them in the store, these attachment sales, right? These unplanned sales, not going to happen when you buy it online as much as you do in the store. So there's all kinds of negative things, and you're exactly right. We make it hard. Now, there are other channels they can use, which is good, right? Because 55% do go buy it either from another retailer or from another channel. But we've got to figure out a way around this. And maybe it's just BOPUS and online, but there has to be a better solution. You're right. We can head down this rabbit hole, but it is creating issues for that shopper experience, and does impact, again, what we call omni-channel and that omni-channel experience.
Well, one shameless plug, we've done a couple of different podcasts with Joe Cole, who's the vice president of asset protection at Macy's, and he is fanatic about leveraging RFID, not necessarily for the RFID portion of it, but for the serialization of the data, because he can prove that these 12 pairs of jeans got picked up, were owned by a Macy's, never went through a point of sale, left the store, and he can go back and prove, because they're serialized, that they were the property of Macy's and they were stolen. They can get federal authorities involved to reclaim that merchandise and shut down these little crime rings, which is fascinating, which is a whole new thing we'll be talking about for years, because I think that's the future of that. But so what role does technology play in this omni-channel? You mentioned the CIOs who are really arguing that it should be one. And by the way, they were probably right. They were definitely right. So what's the technology? Because at the end of the day, people are used to saying UPC quantity, et cetera. How is these omni-channel systems really have to be successfully driven for the future use?
Well, and let me give you an example of, there's a couple key things here, and we can talk of, and I think we will probably talk about RFID and the role it plays in that foundation. If you go back and look at that house again, that foundation is inventory accuracy and RFID. But that blending of the physical and digital channels is so important that we can't overlook. And I want to give you an example of where technology and really the innovative retailers are playing. So again, this idea of blending channels, where the retailer knows me as a consumer and doesn't put me in a channel, right, where I'm Bill online buyer, and I'm customer, and I'm Bill in the store buyer, I'm Bill catalog buyer, whatever it may be, right? I'm one. So I'll give you an example of retail, and I'm not going to mention the name, although I should, because they've done a good job here, but I'm not going to. So Mike, one of the things I think you've learned from me over the years, like through the BOPUS work, is I'll actually take it upon myself to test out, almost stress test a retailer of, okay, are they actually doing this right? And I'll use my own experiences and those around me to really test whether they're doing something right. So I did this, and I started doing this some time ago with omnichannel, of Again, keep in mind the stat I gave you earlier, 74% do research online, buy in store, right? So you think about it, that's a huge number. So I will do that, and I'll be very intentional. I'll go to the retailer's website and I'll log in so they know who I am, right? And I'm looking at this, and they know dwell times. How long did I look at this? Did I click on this 55-inch Samsung and look at it? Did I do a compare to others? That, they have all the analytics there, right? The retailers are really good at what you're looking at online, right? That's one of the advantages you have online is you capture all those analytics, and you can, hey, Bill looked at this. He's really interested in this, right? Now, I go to the store. When I walk into the store, I have their app open. I get on their Wi-Fi to make sure that they clearly know that I'm in the store.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've had at least one retailer who absolutely ties those together. Hey, Bill, we recognize you're in the store. That 55-inch Samsung TV that you looked at earlier today is available on aisle 6.
Smart.
Yeah, right? And that is a retailer who is tying those things together, right? Who's going to help me based upon regardless of what channel. And then if one of the retailers, if I went and looked at it, but I didn't buy it, when I walked out and got outside the geo fence, hey, Bill, we noticed you didn't buy this 55-inch. Could we ship it to your house? Or would a 10% off today encourage you to go ahead and buy this TV? Because obviously I was interested enough to look at it online, go to the store, but for some reason I didn't buy it and I left. Now that is obviously that is omni-channel retail at its finest. Like the vast majority of retailers are not there. They need to be, but that's all technology enabled. It's technology enabled by having accurate inventory, by knowing your consumer across the channels, by having the apps, by having all of the things. You got to pull them together. And as you know, from your experience, your long experience in both the brand side and the retailer side, getting all those systems to work together is incredibly hard.
Yeah. It would almost feel like if you have that experience that the retailer is working for you as a customer. Exactly. I don't know of I know a lot of people, my wife included, who love to go shopping. They don't like to go replenishing. So paper towels and milk and eggs, that's not shopping to them. That means I've got to fill up my pantry. But I'll go spend time in the store to look at all the cool stuff while somebody else is taking care of all the replenishment stuff. Thank you very much. Yeah. I would love to do that. But now you're creating a website environment where that retailer, whether it's in the store, online, or whatever, is actually working for me. Yep. 10% off because I didn't buy it. Oh, well, maybe I will now. I think that's a good idea. So that's awesome.
Now, I do have to say the scenario that I just laid out, which was a true scenario, not TVs, but it was, in one of the retailers. Again, there's only a couple retailers that are close to that. Some consumers would say that's creepy. I don't want the retailer. That's way too much information about me. You know what? You don't have to have that, right? You don't have to log in at home to look at TVs. You don't have to use their app. You don't have to use their Wi-Fi. If you don't want that level of customization for you as a consumer, right? To your point, Mike, you said it very well. The retailer's working for me. If you don't want the retailer working for you, you just don't give them that information, and they won't, because they're in the dark, right? But if you really want that retailer working for you, you have to give them something for them to know you, to be able to help you.
Yep. Great point. And a lot of retailers will offer programs that actually are charging customers for these kind of services. I mean, people like Walmart. Walmart has a Walmart Plus where I can order things online and they'll actually deliver it to my refrigerator in my house. Yep. I pay for that service, and I'm willing to pay for that service because of the time that sends me. That's right. Other people, when you go to a Costco or a Sam's Club, you're buying a membership that gives you the privilege of shopping there. So when you give them that information back, hey, by the way, we just walked by something you might be interested in. I don't see that as creepy. Other people would, and guess what? You don't go buy in those places and you don't opt into a retailer's program. That's okay. It's awesome.
Right.
So that all starts with these retailers need to know exactly what they have, and they need to know exactly where it's located. And the third piece is they have to know exactly what's available for sale and not, because as my TV example gave before, just because it's in the building doesn't mean you can sell it to a customer. So talk to us about, and this will go back to 20 years ago. Tell us about the importance of on-hand accuracy and the role that various technologies like RFID play a critical role to make sure that you know what you have and where it's located.
Mike, that's why, again, I'm going to go refer back to that omni-channel house. One of the reasons I use the visualization of a house is we all know how important that foundation of the house is, right? If you don't have the right foundation, you can build beautiful walls and a nice roof, but that house is not going to stand, right? If you put that house and you build it on sand, the house is going to fall, right? It may look good for a little while, but it's going to fall. You've got to have that solid foundation that everything is built upon. And for omni-channel, that foundation is inventory accuracy. It is absolutely the critical thing that a retailer must have. And I know we've talked in the previous times I've been on here, and you've talked in other of your podcasts about inventory accuracy and how important that is. And, retailers for years, bricks and mortar, they got away with not being very accurate, right? It was either on the shelf or it wasn't. And the retailer was kind of in charge. And, let's go back to history, right? Retail 1.0 was the suppliers were the leaders of the retail world, because the supplier determined who could sell their stuff. And they even, determined retailer A could sell it or not. Then we went to retail 2.0, and the retailers were in charge, because the retailers were big enough they could then dictate the terms to the suppliers. Well, now we are clearly in retail 3.0, and the consumer is in charge, right? And a retailer, even a bricks and mortar, really struggles if they don't have good inventory accuracy. But for decades, right, that was just the norm. Retailers actually built their systems for having inaccuracy and inaccurate information in their systems. You cannot build an omni-channel house on that, because you will disappoint the customer, because you're gonna show them things that aren't there, like your TV example, right? That you should have never been shown that they had 3, because they were not 3 that were sellable.
Yep.
Right? They disappointed you because they didn't have a firm foundation, right? Or you get that consumer coming in with the promise that you have something they don't. Or the opposite of that, what we've seen retailers do is hide the inventory, right? Yeah, I've got 4 of them. Not really sure I have 4 of them. So if somebody's looking at this on the phone, I'm going to tell them there's 0. And I think I shared some stats on a previous podcast on the buy online pick up in store of that issue right there. Well, hiding inventory is not good either, right? Because again, if you view the consumer as one and not different channels, you want them to buy it. And, you've got to have confidence in the inventory accuracy. So what we have found, of course, through now 20 plus years of the lab being open, and, a couple of years before that, working with Walmart and others on this inventory accuracy issue, RFID is, from all the things we've ever looked at, is the most reliable, inexpensive, sustainable, and scalable way that we have found. Yes, there are some things that are cheaper, but it doesn't hit those other things, right? There are some that, it'll hit 1 or 2 of those characteristics. But if you're going to have something that's reliable, inexpensive, sustainable, and scalable, RFID is the only technology across the supply chain. Now, to have full visibility and to truly get kind of nirvana there on inventory accuracy, we're seeing a portfolio of things, right? Computer vision has a role in some things. We touched on briefly about 2D barcodes, and it has a role, especially at point of sale in a transition period of time. So I'm not saying RFID solves everything, but if you start with the basic concept that you've got to have high inventory accuracy, you start with RFID. And that's why, that the talk that I gave, back in 2015 was RFID, the omni-channel enabler. And then fast forward 10 years of the presentation, can retailers be omni-channel ready without RFID? And I said, the answer is no. And the answer is no, because you don't have the foundation that you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. Great point. So let's unpack the RFID portion of this a little bit, because obviously that's been, you and I have been working on RFID for 20 years. It just now feels like it's at the tip of it's about to be a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And I know with some retailers, I've started and stopped them 5 times going, this will never work. Well, stay in there. I just refuse to give up. It's not going to happen. Right. We're going to make this thing work. But here's the interesting part. And you just said it. There's a RF part, which allows non-line of sight, allows radio frequencies to talk to a lot of items simultaneously. But I think that's actually the minor part of it. The more important part of it is the ID part, which is every single item. We've talked about this podcast a whole bunch. Every single item in today's world, most retailers are UPC, one here. I got 10 of them. And it's just, I don't know anything about the 10 other than I do have 10. And by the way, that 10 is probably wrong. With RFID or serialized item, I'm literally assigning a unique serial number to every single unit in the supply chain. That's unique globally across the supply chain. So the TV example, yes, I have 3 TVs, serial number 1, number 2, number 3. All of them are unavailable to sell because they're either on a wall or they're on a display or they just got returned via claims. So talk about the role that serialization, whether it's picked up with RFID or a 2D barcode or even other computer vision, that serialization is probably the most important part. Would you not agree?
Yeah, it is. And really, again, you go back 20 years and we talked about RFID. And again, as you said, you parse it apart and there's the technology side and then there's the ID side. Mm-hmm. And really the technology is meaningless and worthless without the ID part, right? The RFID is just a data carrier. At the end of the day, now, why it's a really effective, and we talked about, right, the things that make it an effective data carrier, but at the end of the day, it carries that serial number. There's other ways to carry that serial number. 2D barcode is one, but that's the key. And again, keep referring to that house, but that middle layer there, which is the really incredible one, because that's where you build the capabilities. It's visibility to the single unit. And if you think about, UPC, you don't have visibility to the single unit. You have visibility to that product set, right? Yeah. You may have 50 of those coffee cups. I don't have visibility to a single one. I have visibility to that entire bevy of cups, regardless of the number of them, but I couldn't tell you this cup from that cup. Mm-hmm. You've got to have that visibility to single unit. So that serialization is incredibly important. And that's where I find 2D barcode has really been an incredibly important link in this supply chain, pun intended there, as we look of fully tying it apart, tying it together, because that point of sale was kind of the missing link of, the end of that life of that product before it gets to the consumer. And we will, with RFID, we could track it all the way up to that point, but then the point of sale systems were not built to capture that digital ID, right? It was meant to capture UPC, 2D barcode. Now we can say, Mike, you had those 10 coffee cups and I sold this one and I sold this one. And not only that, but I sold this one to Mike and I sold this one to Bill. I sold this one to Mary. That's you got to have that before you can build all these other capabilities. And by the way, when I talk about building these capabilities and, research online, buy online, ship from store, and whatever other capabilities, it's that layer, by the way, that retailers will differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's the layer right below the customer experience.
Yep. I'll take this full circle. And I didn't plan on this, but it kind of works out. That whole lock it up so your customers can't steal it from you. Well, if you unlock all that and you know that Mike Graen is now in the store, and you know that Mike Graen went to the register and bought this unique serial number, this specific cup, and that I left the store with it, if I come back with another one of these and try and return it, you can go, I'm sorry, Mike, we don't have a record that this was ever bought. We thank you for returning the merchandise to us. We do appreciate it. And if you don't want to leave the merchandise with us, we'll call the authorities. I mean, you can play that call because you're literally putting a unique serial number in every single item. You didn't buy this one. Nobody bought this one. This one was stolen. Whether you stole it or you bought it from somebody who stole it, doesn't matter. It's stolen merchandise, and we appreciate you returning it to us.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so you think about that person, right, who is stealing it to return it to another store to get money back, or organized crime, you know, who is stealing these, you know, in a very systemic way, and then, you know, warehousing them and then selling them back. You really put an end to that, because the serialization, I mean, you track it back to exactly where it was and who supposedly, you know, bought it.
Yep.
And if they didn't, that's the issue.
BOP's collaborative inventory intelligence technology is helping many retailers and CPGs such as Colgate-Palmolive, PepsiCo, Coty, and Duracell avoid lost sales, markdowns, and spoilage by streamlining their next-gen collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment process. Learn more at bops.ai.
This switches gears a little bit, but as I think about RFID is a way of reconciling your inventory. There's really three different ways to kind of capture it at store level, at least at store level. Number one is a physical handheld, a device. Yep. Secondly is with some kind of fixed infrastructure. And thirdly is we're seeing a lot more retailers look at what I call automated data captures, call that RFID robots that run at night and basically do the work so the associates don't have to do that. Right. As we start looking at the linking point of sale to exits to returns and the life of a project, I mean, we always said RFID will start with a handheld. I feel like we're at this tipping point here of people going, no, I got to have some level of fixed infrastructure, automated data capture, get my associates out of collecting data and letting us to be able to use this driver of business. What's your reaction to that?
Well, you know, we've kind of used the handhelds as a one size fits all. Mm-hmm. And we did that, I think, when I say we, I think the industry, as we're looking at adopting RFID, use it as a one size fits all because it's the easiest to deploy. Mm-hmm. It's the cheapest per unit to deploy. And I'm not, you know, you look at the total cost, you know, maybe it's not, but on an individual basis, it's the cheapest, right? People are accustomed to using those, and some of them are now built in where they're so close to just being this, right? Yep. We're comfortable with those. It makes sense, but you know, those do not help you with every use case. Right. They're not appropriate for every product category that you have. They're not even appropriate for every, you know, some stores and some locations may dictate inventory more often than others. Mm-hmm. And the key there is, in an earlier slide, I think even back in that 2015 study that I referenced, you know, that I presented a long time ago, you know, I had a slide that showed the human interaction that's necessary to get those reads. Mm-hmm. And, you know, handhelds require human interaction. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, then you're actually putting the accuracy of the system in the hands of a person. And that's usually your biggest fail point is people. And right. I know that sounds, you know, like a dig against people, but that's where we have the issues, right? So I, you know, a long time ago, I started talking about something called, you know, move to Ohio, you know, and you have to kind of visualize it, zero HIO, you know, zero human interaction in operations. Move to Ohio. Try to pull that person out as much as you can and let the system do that work. So when we think about overheads that are taking continuous reads, right? Or robots, or even wearables that you can put on a person, but the person doesn't have to interact with it, but as they're walking around is taking inventory. Anything where you take out, hey, Mike, go take inventory, because a lot of things happen, right? You may be out there and you're taking inventory, and a customer comes up and says, hey, excuse me, sir, can you help me find so-so? And you do what you're supposed to. Yes, let me go help you find it.
Yep.
And you know what? Your inventory count was disrupted. You may not go back to the same place you were. Things happen, right?
Yep.
So try to remove that. The good news is, over time, we have this portfolio of technologies from, kind of the eye in the sky zonal reads to wearables to asset-based readers, that people can wear on their body, or you can put on a floor, a floor waxer or something if somebody's going around, all kinds of things. And that's companies just have to, retailers and others who are deploying it, just have to look at those cost-benefit trade-offs. What use cases are you trying to solve? And, what is the accuracy of these various ones? And then obviously the cost comes in when you're calculating the ROI.
Yeah, exactly. Well, beyond the cost of the merchandise, as a retailer, your number one expense is the labor.
Yep.
And do you want your people to be data capture devices? For years, we've had people scanning stuff, taking pictures of stuff, doing RFID scans. Do you want to spend money on them to do that? Because it's certainly not very exciting work. Or do you want to allow the system to collect that data, give them feedback about what needs to change, i.e., there's 2 in the back room, there's none on the sales floor, go get those 2 and get them on the sales floor. Because last time I checked, we don't sell socks out of the back room. We sell it on the sales floor, right? But that does also free up associates or basically the retail associates to work with customers to help them out, which to me, certainly Home Depot and Lowe's is very used to that, but every retailer should be always happy to help a customer anytime that they can. So, well, Dr. Hardgrave, this has been fascinating. I got one final question for you, and so we got literally a couple minutes left. Give us your top 1 to 2 omni-channel priorities. We see, by the way, your 2016 omni-channel house could be today, because a lot of those things are still today. But what do you think the industry needs to tackle to meet some of these continuing customer needs?
Well, look, you have to start with the basics, right? And again, that's why I like the simplicity of the house and the visualization of the house. If you want to talk about the 2 things that you've got to do to truly be omni-channel, you have to have high inventory accuracy, right?
Yep.
You got to lay that foundation.
Yep.
And you've got to have a seamless blend between your physical and digital channels.
Yep.
And if you can't and won't or are unable to do those 2 things, the rest of the things will never optimize. You may make a few headways here or there, but you are not going to be the retailer you can be if you can't do those 2 things. So you have to start there.
Well, this has been fantastic. 2 things. Number one, for all the retailers out there, this boils it down to the simplicity of focusing on the basics. And some people do it really well. Some people really want a cool website that's really neat and it has things that twirl, et cetera. But if you don't do the foundational stuff, the other thing, Dr. Hardgrave, this has done is you've mentioned this house at least 10 times. Justin is not happy. And I think this is one of the best podcasts we've ever had, because it'll be just a little bit of an opportunity to tease our friend Justin Patton a little bit. So, Dr. Hardgrave, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it very well. And by the way, you have a tie there. I think today, for those of you who don't know, today is the date that we're electing a new president, or a new president. So you actually have your American flag tie there and all kinds of
American
stuff.
flag tie. Look, this is an important day in U.S. history, right? Everybody needs to get out. If you haven't voted, get out and vote. Well, by the time they see this, it'll be decided. But
right.
As we sit here, I hope everybody's going out to vote.
There you go. Dr. Hardgrave, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. And for those of you who have known Dr. Hardgrave, thank him for the incredible leadership he's done, not only to help the next generation, which are students, but also to certainly help the industry. So, Dr. Hardgrave, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. As always, glad to be on your show and appreciate all you do for the industry as well.
Absolutely. Take care.